So was the entire Kandahar hijack episode goofed up? And at what level did that goof up take place? Joining us now from the BJP is this National Spokesperson Sudhanshu Trivedi. From the Congress, we are joined by Vadakkan. We have Sushant Sareen, Senior Fellow at the Vivekananda International Foundation with us. And K C Singh, former Secretary of the NDA, will be joining us in just a while. And in fact, Mr. Sushant Sareen, I want to start with you first. Do you think that in this entire episode, and Kandahar hijacking has been spoken about ad nauseum, it's just easier to be wise in hindsight?
Obviously, you have all the answers, or you think you have all the answers with the benefit of hindsight. Whether the terrorists, while the plane was at Amritsar, whether they were heavily armed or lightly armed, is something we know. We're still not entirely sure, but something we suspect much later, after the hijacking was over. I personally think that for the government to release 3 dreaded terrorists was a terrible decision, but this was a judgment call which a government of the day made. Ideally, we should have learned some lessons from that. I'm not very sure we have. The problem really is that we haven't answered the simple question: what is the price we are willing to pay as a country to fight against terrorism? And I don't mean a price which only the security forces personnel have to pay, but the price which we as citizens are willing to pay to ensure that the country stays secure. And that means that if my relatives are on that flight, do I root for an operation to snuff out the terrorism, or do I say that hold negotiations and if necessary swap certain terrorists? I think the answer to that question will come then, God forbid, next time there is an incident like this. That is when we'll get the answer. We have now, the UPA government did take this decision that there will be no more hostage swaps if such an incident was to happen. But the answer really will be known the next time, and it will be known. And I think what we also need to be clear about is that do people like you and me, if our relatives are on the plane, will then an operation be carried out? Or if, for example, God forbid, a Rahul Gandhi or a relative of a top minister is in that plane, will such an operation still be carried out? I think that is another question to which we need an answer.
And you know, Sushant Sareen, that is what the BJP has said ever since this issue has come up again. The BJP, talking about what happened 16 years ago, has said that we were under pressure to first preserve the lives of those 200-odd Indians who were on board the plane. Sudhanshu Trivedi, the allegation that's now coming from the Congress and other opposition parties is that your hyper-nationalism has been exposed as fraud, as a lie, and what happened back in 1999 was a goof-up. What do you first and foremost say to that?
There are 2 aspects of your question. One is a particular incidence of Kandahar, and other is a so-called allegation of the Congress party about the hyper-nationalism of Bharatiya Janata Party. As far as Kandahar is concerned, whether it is a retrospective analysis or an on-the-spot analysis. On the spot, now it is very easy to analyze that retrospectively we would have done so, we would have done that. At the time we were not having any knowledge whether they are having machine guns inside or the grenades inside or the explosive inside, and initially they have took the plane to Dubai. They have not took to Kandahar. Eventually, they have took the plane to Kandahar.
Before that, it was Amritsar.
There were so many options.
Before that, Mr. Trivedi, it was Amritsar, though.
So,
you know, and
when the plane was leaving Amritsar,
has acknowledged that there was a delay in certain decisions that could have perhaps saved the day when the plane was on Indian soil in Amritsar. A Bowser was supposed to be sent. Yes. There was supposed to be a sharpshooter on board.
Let me complete the answer.
Rajesh Mishra himself has said that yes, there was a delay there. Yeah.
That's what I was saying, that when it was in Amritsar, the things were not clear what is there inside. And initially the plane was taking off from Amritsar to Dubai, not to Kandahar. So there were so many diplomatic options are also there, so that we can get better knowledge of what is there inside. The refueling option there in Dubai and other things were there. Eventually it landed in Kandahar. And one more thing, which is now retrospective analysis, it is very easy. In Kandahar at the time, it was the most powerful terrorist center of the world, which has executed 9/11. It was not at all comparable with any situation in the world. So if you are saying that the government of India was dealing with that power, which is at that time a challenge even United States, so the things were different. Now about the hyper-nationalism of the Bharatiya Janata Party, I would like to ask, why they have led, here was a question of hundreds of passengers. Why Congress government has allowed Anderson to flee? just for the sake of why they are allowed Kochi to flee.
Mr. Trivedi,
so these are
would
not
you at
the
least
things.
accept
You have
that the
allowed so many
the government at that time was caught on the wrong foot? And I think Sushant Sareen wants to quickly rebut you before I go across to Tom Vadakkan. Yes, Sushant Sareen.
No, I think the question which not just the BJP but the Congress and every political party has to answer is that we now know what happened, with the IC 814 hijacking. The question which now they need to answer to us as citizens is that whether that was a right decision or a wrong decision is another matter. But next time such an incident happens, are they again going to weigh whether they want to swap to save the lives of 200 people, or as has happened after IC 814, that the guys we released went on to kill 2,000. We might have saved 200, but they went on to kill over 2,000 people in the various terrorist attacks which those organizations which they headed launched after that. The question which these guys need to answer, our people need to answer is, would they now say that next time such a thing will not happen?
That it wasn't handled satisfactorily, that the government buckled, the government of the day.
His question is a very pertinent. I would like to remind the people of India, at the time what happened? There were hundreds of relatives of those persons on board were staging a dharna in front of 7 RCR supported by Congress party.
Mr. Trivedi, no,
was it that type of maturity?
Did the government therefore buckle to that kind of emotional pressure rather than taking a decision which was diplomatic and, a more prompt decision? Was it buckling under this kind of emotional pressure from the public, and was that the right decision? That is exactly
government
the question
has
that
taken
Sushant Sareen has asked
decision
you.
In consultation with all political parties. And we have taken into confidence all relevant persons.
Let's get
unfortunately
in on that. 1 second. So
he's
let's
being
get
very economical with truth.
That's what they've been saying throughout. That it was consensus was procured from all political parties.
Now let me get this straight on record. Now let me put this also officially. This is a lie they've been repeating since morning. There was no all-party consultation. They have spoken to some people only on the issue concerned. They have not addressed the solution. Everybody agreed that the passengers must be protected. They carry nationalism on their sleeves. We are saying the nation, we are all patriotic. Nationalism is in our heart. We wanted those people protected. But there are ways and means. He's gone straight to Kandahar. I ask you what happened in Amritsar. One military truck could have stopped this aircraft in the tarmac. I'm not saying there's any threat to the pilot or to the crew or to the passengers. They could have delayed it. There could have been negotiations, but you did not have a political decision there.
Mr. Vadakkan, what they've said, and in their defense, what they've said is we didn't know what the threat inside was like. Now, therefore,
but you could buy time.
Therefore, I ask you,
negotiation was possible.
Do you effectively say then that the decision to put the lives?
No, but one second. It was said then.
Yeah, so what the decision...
You check up the archives. It was said then.
The decision to put the lives of those 200 people on board as the primary, priority, do you now categorically say that that was wrong?
I made that very categorical. Our consultation process that did take place at the highest level, we said, yes, the passengers must be protected. But you cannot lay the foundation of passing on terrorists, exporting these terrorists, and who are the foundation of terrorism in the subcontinent. Not only in the subcontinent, the world over. The gentleman who said that 2,000 people and more have been killed.
Yes.
There was no political decision. There was a political paralysis at the center. That is what
that's the question that has come up. Mr. K C Singh also joins us. Thank you and good evening. Mr. K C Singh, what Sushant Sareen just pointed out is that, did it set up a really dangerous precedent? Because yes, the government of the day thought it was a primary priority to save the lives of those on board, but the release of the 3 dead terrorists has led to perhaps thousands more being killed.
You can, now of course, hindsight, everybody can have a different perspective, but let me put it in perspective because I was ambassador in UAE and the plane from Lahore came to Dubai. It stayed there for a while and then it went to Kandahar. So I saw the crisis in the making. It was a convergence of circumstances which made it, after the plane left Amritsar, we were on a losing wicket. The only little possibility in Dubai that we got about 30 odd women and children off. The local government, the deputy ruler of Dubai, Sheikh Mohammed, he was there. Sheikh Mohammed, who is now Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi, was there. So all the top princes were in the control room. They were trying to talk them out of it. And this was, remember, during Ramadan. So these people had not had any food and they wanted to take off as soon as they could land in Kandahar. Kandahar had no night landing. So UAE had their commandos deployed. This is not often known. I don't think they would have allowed us to go in because they had their own commandos. I was told later they had practiced on a similar plane. So had something happened on the flight, they would have boarded it. They would have definitely, but they were not about to do it because UAE, Saudi Arabia and Pakistan at that stage were the only 3 countries in the world having relations with Taliban. And they also had close relations with Pakistan. So they didn't want to start off a war with Taliban on the basis of saving an Indian plane, nor were the Americans willing to use more than just normal pressure.
Was it therefore a diplomatic failure at UAE? Mr. K C Singh, therefore, do you think...
No, it was not a diplomatic...
Because that's something that A.K. Doval himself has said back in 2010, referring specifically to the possibility of something happening at UAE, to the possibility of perhaps securing the release of those passengers on board. He's called what happened in UAE a diplomatic failure.
No, he can do that because he can call somebody else's action as a failure and his own success when he was in Kandahar because he's telling the story. Because he's the one who was in Kandahar. Now the question is that if you have failed in allowed the plane to leave Amritsar, how do you compel UAE to conduct an operation against a country, against people who obviously they empathize with? These are not Sikh terrorists. These were people they were empathizing with. So that they managed to get some women and children off itself was some achievement. But they were not about to fight your war for you, and that is the lesson. Nobody will fight a war for you.
Tom Vadakkan, today the Congress says that there wasn't any consultation. The fact of the matter is that Mr. Dulat himself has said that somebody had to bell the cat. The fact is no one was willing to take the call. So ultimately the government of the day had to take a call. It may seem unpopular now, but that seemed to be the only other option available in front of them at that time because 170 civilian lives were at stake. How can you fault the government for doing that? There were people who were clamoring for their loved ones to be brought back. How can the government of the day be faulted for giving primacy to human lives, 170 of them?
We were on the subject very clearly. I categorically stated that we were not compromising on the passengers. But what I am arguing again and again, that this aircraft could have been delayed in Amritsar.
But sir, were those suggestions given to the crisis management group?
But they weren't.
Did your party contribute to this suggestion?
The book clearly states there was no political will. There was an Advani ji who was a strong man, and there was Vajpayee ji who was playing soft. You had a policy paralysis. And now today, they come up and say, in hindsight, you check up the papers of the day, the editorials of the day.
We've got that. Okay, Mr. Vadakkan, we've got just that. So this is an article from 1999 which talks specifically about the all-party meeting. And you said that the all-party meeting or the consensus was only about apprising all parties of the situation and not about any decision. But the article of the day categorically states that the all-party meeting held this morning to discuss the hijack of IC-814 has left the final decision on what is needed to be done to the government.
That's precisely what I'm saying.
So, so it was consensus to leave the decision to the government.
But to leave 3 terrorists was not the consensus that emerged.
But what is to be done was left to the government.
The foreign minister of this country handed over 3 terrorists. That was not part of the package. You save the passengers, you act, but not to release those deadly terrorists. That was not part of the consensus.
So who's going to take the call? It seems more convenient now, Sudhanshu Trivedi, that at the time, no one is willing to take that unpopular decision because later in history, it's easier to place the blame at someone else's door.
As Mr. Tom Vadakkan has also accepted that the consultation was only for the saving of the passengers. Of course, the consultation can only be of the policy or in principle. The consultation cannot be on the intricacies of the execution. Like I would also like to explain one thing which has been very much said in media in the last 15 years. Why Jaswant Singh ji have gone? Jaswant Singh have not gone there to gift that terrorist to the Taliban. It was there because at the time government of India was not recognizing Taliban, and there was an apprehension that if our delegation reaches there only with the officers and they put another demand, then there has to be a very senior level political leader to take the on-the-spot decision, because there was a possibility that the communication with New Delhi would not have been possible from Kandahar. That's why Jaswant Singh would have gone. That was I am saying, that these are the intricacies. And let me complete the sentence. And as far as the complications and compulsions are concerned, Tom Vadakkan, I would like to ask the Congress party, what was the compulsion for allowing Afzal Guru for 7 years not hanging? What was the compulsion when the Kerala Assembly in 2006, both the Communists and the Congress passed a unanimous resolution in favor of Maulana Fadli of Islamic Vivekananda, who was the Prime Minister of Coimbatore in Tamil Nadu.
Yes.
These are the tendencies which have emboldened the terrorists in India. And there was no policy paralysis. There was a clear-cut appeasement policy on the basis of nationalism by the Congress party, blatantly from Kashmir to Kerala.
Dr. Trivedi, you will not completely steer this debate into a totally different direction. That will not happen. We are going to talk about the issue at hand, and let's just discuss that.
No, he has talked about the policy paralysis and hyper-nationalism.
No. So let's talk about the issue. Okay, fine. Let's talk about the issue
and the hyper-nationalism.
Let's talk about the issue at hand. You've talked about Jaswant Singh escorting the 3 terrorists and their release. Now, the question is, was that an embarrassment to your government or not? Because that is the allegation that has come forth, that it was an embarrassment to the then NDA government.
Yes, this is a very good question. Yes, of course, there was an embarrassment, but embarrassment for India, which is being tried to portray as an embarrassment for BJP. Because I would like to again remind that when the passengers were there in Kandahar, their relatives, on the behest of, along with Congress leaders, were staging dharna in front of 7 RCR, the Prime Minister residence. Was this an act of a mature political party? Of course, not at all. In these type of incidences, whether it is Israel or America or France or England, all the opposition parties kept united, and they consider it as a challenge to the country, not a challenge to the government or party in power.
All right, so you've got your point, Mr. Vadakkan. Did your party then unequivocally make it clear that we are against the release of these 3 terrorists?
We made that categorically clear.
How so?
Forgetting history.
How so?
He's forgetting history. He took him 16 years to justify Jaswant Singh's trip. Today, the first time on national media, Mr. Trivedi comes and tells us, gives a historical cover-up operation. Who and when did this happen? Did you tell the country this? No, you didn't.
So
and today, you talk about a demonstration by some fringe group outside PMO, and then you say you blame us.
So where was your refusal? Where was the Congress party's unequivocal refusal?
Congress party categorically told them that the passengers must be safe, negotiations, tough positions, and not negotiate with terrorists. That's what went wrong.
Sushant Sareen, isn't it exactly what Mr. Dulat has said today, that at that point no one was willing to bell the cat, and it has been borne out by the Congress parties, the statements that the Congress has come up with today. Ultimately, the decision was left to the government, whether it be the government of Punjab at that time, whether it be the Congress at the centre. No one was willing to take an unequivocal decision on what should be done.
Precisely. I think that is quite right. The fact of the matter remains that ultimately this was a call which the central government had to make. I don't think it was within the competence of the Punjab government to go against or in violation of whatever decision the central government was going to take. So ultimately the central government had to take a call, and they had to tell the guys on the spot in Amritsar whether the plane had to be delayed, whether an operation had to be mounted. Now it is entirely possible that while Mr. Dulat says that the then DGP felt that his police commandos could have launched a raid on the plane, maybe the central government of the day did not feel confident that that raid will be successful. Maybe they had some some reservations about that. Maybe they felt that if there are about 20, 30, 40 people who die as a result of that raid, then there will be a massive political fallout and it might not look good. So I don't know what the calculations at that point were. The question which I keep raising is that I don't know why, if a decision was taken, and I believe, I personally think it was a terrible decision to take, but I'm willing to give that much latitude to the government of the day that they took the decision in best faith. Now, ultimately, that decision has not really worked in our favor, either politically or in terms of the security architecture which we want to create. So, we need to reevaluate where we might have gone wrong and admit mistakes. I don't know why politicians are so shy of admitting mistakes. The second thing is that, this question has kept coming up during the day. Did we learn any lessons? This episode happened in 1999. Almost 10 years later, the 26/11 attacks took place. How many hours did it take for us to fly the NSG commandos from Manesar to Bombay? I imagine it was around 18 hours or so. Now, if that is the level of preparedness we had post IC-814 hijacking, then what is the certainty that if we had delayed that plane by another couple of hours, and assuming that the terrorists had not killed a few of the hostages which they had, that the NSG would have reached in time? Now these are all ifs and buts. The question is, what are the lessons we have learned? And I am afraid that for all the grandstanding which is happening in the studio today, I am not sure if next time such an episode happens, we have worked out our SOPs, and next time it will be very clear that the government will not negotiate or not give in to the demands of the terrorists. They might negotiate, they might try and talk the guys out of it, but if push comes to shove, they will launch an operation. They will not give in. I'm not sure of that anymore.
In fact, before Sushant Sareen, we talk about the lessons learned or not. The fact of the matter isn't the fact of the matter also that Mr. Tom Vadakkan, Mr. Dulat himself has said that at the time this is the best decision that could have been taken. So actually, what is the criticism of the government about? In the words of Mr. Dulat today, he said, first class kaam kiya tha government ne, given the circumstances.
I thought
is it just about making political capital?
I thought he used the word goof up. And he was asked specifically.
No. I will beg to differ. He said the Kandahar operation was goofed up, but the government of the day ne first class kaam kiya hai. So there is a distinction which has been made over there.
That is what the
which is why I'm asking you, is it only about political point making?
This is not about brownie points. Now let me correct this. This is not about brownie points. This is not about Congress and BJP. This is about nationalism.
Is it? No, because through the day, I've only heard the Congress talking about the BJP apologizing for what happened in Kandahar.
Now, we were not in action then. It was the government of the day. You know what happened on the Agra summit?
But you just talked about multi-party...
I'll give you more things.
No, you spoke about multi-party consensus when a national crisis like this is facing the country.
Yes.
Where was the consensus? What was the Congress party's contribution?
We were not consulted about action taken.
So weren't individual leaders consulted about what should be the course of action?
Our line at that point of time...
Did the Congress give a conclusive suggestion to the government that this is the way to go? If no one is willing to take a stand, what is the government supposed to do?
We took the stand that yes, passenger safety number one.
No, Mr. Vadakkan, we've already established in the course of this discussion that the only stand that was taken in the multi-party meeting was to leave the decision to the government.
No, that's what I want to correct. The decision was taken, passenger safety number one, no negotiation on terrorist releases. That was a decision taken. Now let them come in the open and argue that.
All right, let's have one more point.
Complete your point.
Syed Salahuddin, or whatever his name is, there was a negotiation. His son was given an admission. He spoke to the RAW chief in Jammu and Kashmir. When you talk about nationalism, you give the terrorist son admission in Indian medical colleges? For what? I mean, I'm not saying that it has never happened, but when you carry your nationalism on your sleeve, for God's sake, tell the nation how this came to happen. How did this happen?
Mr. Sudhanshu Trivedi, on the issue of Kandahar, was the opposition ignored? Could a better solution have been arrived at with a multi-party consensus?
It was more a question of strategic and technical execution than the multi-party consensus. The consensus was there, try to save the life, and as far as possible, do not release the candidates.
That's what I said.
Rest was the execution part on which the political class was not having any role. But I would like to remind, when the Congress is seeking apology from Bharatiya Janata Party, I would like to remind an incident. In 1979, there was one Mr. Bhola Pandey who hijacked a plane, and his demand was release Mrs. Indira Gandhi. She was in jail. And what you have done? You have given him afterwards a ticket of Congress, and he became a Congress MLA. Has you apologized for that? You have given. This is a shameful example of giving political status to a hijacker.
1 second.
For which the Congress party should have seek an apology, but they have not done till now, since the last 35 years.
I'm afraid what you and Mr. Vadakkan both are doing is completely politicizing this instead of listening to what Sushant Sareen is saying. That, you know, the
when you are asking apology from BJP, then obviously a political answer has to be given, and such type of shameful event of past has to be recognized, again recognized in the mindset of
you carry nationalism on your sleeve, Mr. Trivedi.
Mr. Vadakkan,
you will have to suffer this.
Mr. Vadakkan and Mr. Trivedi.
Nationalism on your sleeve, not in your hearts. Stop doing that.
Okay,
do you admit or not that you have given a party ticket to a plane hijacker?
Okay.
And subsequently he became MLA of your party in Uttar Pradesh.
Sudhanshu Trivedi, please have respect for your fellow panelists. We're going to go across to Mr. K C Singh. Mr. K C Singh, you know, what's also being said is that, of course, it's much easier to really look at something threadbare in hindsight. And the other, you know, one of the other questions that's come up during the course of the day is the timing of these revelations, the timing of these statements as they precede a book launch.
Well, that you can't deny any writer of a book. You know, the publisher and the writer want the maximum publicity for the book. There's no harm as long as there are revelations which are coming out, which are not against the public interest. But just to revert to the debate going on, I really agree. I agree with Sushant Sareen. The two parties should not make it a public debating spat. Nor is such decisions taken at an open forum. Mr. Vajpayee was then the Prime Minister. He had to weigh all the factors and take a decision. It was his cross to carry. Don't forget, somebody like President Reagan committed the mistake of Iran-Contra. He dealt with Iran. He gave arms to Iran in exchange for hostages being released by Hezbollah behind the back of his own Congress. So it happens. It's not that leaders can sometimes weigh human factors and take a decision, even if in hindsight you may say it could have been done another way. But at that particular point, there was really no solution, because we had no relationship with Taliban. Pakistan was in connivance with them, a landlocked country, and we didn't have the lift capability. I don't even know if we today have the ability. It's one thing to cross the Myanmar border and, you know, pat our backs and say we've conducted a raid. But can we go into, say, Kandahar even today, flying across Pakistan stealthily, landing the commandos and getting the people out when we don't know, maybe the planes had already been wired by the time we get there to be blown up. And that was, I think, one of the factors in Amritsar, because they didn't know what the terrorists had.
Absolutely. In fact, the points that you and Sushant Sareen have both raised, Mr. K C Singh, I want to take that to Mr. Sudhanshu Trivedi as the final word. Would you have done it differently today? God forbid, if something like this were to recur, have lessons been learned, would the government have done anything differently today? Mr. Sudhanshu Trivedi, final words.
If you are asking about what is to be done and if something could have been possible differently, as a political person, I cannot answer. Because so many strategic things were involved, and those persons who were involved in negotiation, from military, from intelligence and other things, they could have been in a better position to decide what differently could have been there. But I would also like to remind one more thing. Do you remember the siege of Hazrat Bal in 1993 during Narasimha Rao regime? What happened? Those terrorists there in Hazrat Bal were officially allowed a safe passage towards Pakistan.
Is to
so
even,
the situation comes.
There is a hypothetical question that has been put to you, which is, should, God forbid, this situation arise now or in the future, would you do or would your government do things differently? Unfortunately, you've not answered that question.
Actually, there is a one fact which nobody is recognizing at the time. The Kandahar at the time was under the control of Taliban, which was the most powerful terrorist organization at the time, which has executed 9/11. So can you imagine with which power government of India was government
All
of
right,
India was
all right,
dealing with
all
the
right. I think in
hypothetical to
conclusion,
discuss on the
Sushant
TV
Sareen
channel
wants to attempt
that
an
what
answer.
different option could have been. The chief
Final
negotiator was Mr.
20
Ajit
seconds,
Doval,
Mr.
who is
Sushant
right now
Sareen.
the National Security Advisor, and other things, other persons like Mr. Sareen and others who are sitting here.
Gentlemen, we have to close the
better.
debate. Mr. Trivedi, yes. So let Sushant Sareen make the final point then.
You know, let me just say, I think, you know, the moment we gave a terrorist organization these platitudes of how powerful they were and etc., then we, in a sense, display our weakness. I think that is a cardinal sin which we are committing. Number one. Number two, if you are willing to pay a price, then there are always options. But if you are not willing to pay a price, then there are no options. Then you have to just simply buckle under and give the guys what they are asking for. Perhaps negotiate the terms down a little bit, but ultimately buckle under. However, if you are willing to pay the price, now I put a hypothetical question on your program today. What if at that point of time, after 2 or 3 days, when we had got a fix on who these guys are, the government of India, and then they were being unreasonable, the government of India had said, okay, fine, there is nothing more we can do. We leave the fate of our citizens in the hands of God, but we will get even with these guys. Do you think they could have killed 160-odd passengers? No way they could have done that. And I don't think the Pakistani masters would have allowed them to do it. Perhaps they would have killed a couple, but ultimately the terrorists would have to buckle under, and you would have shown certain spine. The question is that you have options if you're willing to pay a price. If you're not willing to pay a price, you have no options.
I want to just insert one line into this. It was mentioned by the spokesman who just spoke. He said that the UPA had agreed on one thing, that there would be no swap. And we would like to solemnly stick to this, that there cannot be any swap. I think a policy
that's one of the questions that, yes, we need to look at from here on, as Sushant Sareen has pointed out. Is India willing to have an absolutely no negotiation policy when it comes to terrorists in the future? Thank you all, gentlemen, for joining us on the second debate tonight.